Reading a chest radiograph is a vital skill that all medical students must know, and it is equally important to follow a systematic approach while reading a chest radiograph. Hello friends, I am Dr. Anshika Gulati from National Heart Institute, and today I'll take you through a step-by-step approach of reading a normal chest radiograph. Firstly, we differentiate whether it is a PA film or an AP film. By PA, I mean postero-anterior, which means within the patient, the direction of the X-ray beam is from posterior to anterior, and it is done by making the patient to stand facing towards the X-ray film with the chin up and shoulders rotated outwards. We ask the patient to take a deep breath and hold breath in full inspiration, and with the film to focus distance of 6 feet, and that gives us a PA view. For an AP view, the patients are generally sick and lying down, and the film is behind the patient, and the direction of X-ray beam within the patient is from anterior to posterior, and the film to focus distance is shorter. Also, those patients are generally sick, so they are not able to hold breath in full inspiration, so that gives an antero-posterior view. Now on the film, how to differentiate? This is a PA film with the clavicles more horizontal and the apical regions of the lungs are well visualized, while in an AP film the clavicles would be more cranially projected and the apical region will be obscured by the medial ends of the clavicle. Also, the scapulae, which are rotated outwards in a PA film, they will be overlapping on the lung fields on an AP view. Next, the heart size and the mediastinum will appear to be magnified on an AP view because of the reduced film to focus distance, and also because of the reduced inspiratory efforts in the sick patients. And also, the bronchovascular markings will be very crowded because of the low inspiratory effort in those patients. The ribs also will be more obliquely placed in an AP film. So these are certain differentiating factors. Second step is to look at the side marker. This says that this is the right side of the patient and this is the left side of the patient. You have to determine the situs by looking at the arch of aorta and the cardiac apex and the fundic bubble. Normally these three are on the left side, so we say that this patient has normal situs and the marker has been placed correctly. Second step is to look for patient rotation and centering. For that, we look at the medial heads of both the clavicles and we draw the interspinous line. These are the spinous processes of the vertebrae. So we see the distance between the medial head of the clavicle and the interspinous line on either side. If these two distances are equal, then we say that the film has been centered correctly and there is no patient rotation. Why is that important? Because if the film is rotated, then one hemithorax will appear very lucent, that is darker, and one hemithorax will appear very bright. And secondly, the heart size will appear to be falsely magnified if there is rotation. And thirdly, the hyla will appear asymmetrical. One will appear very bigger and brighter, while the other will appear smaller. So look carefully for patient rotation and centering. Next technical factor to look for is the exposure and penetration. If the KVP of the X-ray tube has been appropriately set while taking the X-ray film, then we call it a well-exposed, well-penetrated film. We determine that by looking at the intervertebral disc pace. So count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this disc pace between D8, D9 level, if it is just visualized, then we say that it is a well exposed film. Next point is to look for the inspiratory effort. As I already told, the PA film is taken in full inspiration. So if you count the anterior ends of rib, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So we see the anterior end of upper 6 ribs are above the level of dome of diaphragm. So this is adequate inspiration. Also, you can look at the posterior ends, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. So posterior ends of upper 10 ribs are above the level of dome of diaphragm. So we can say that this film has been taken in full inspiration. Now we go, after looking at all these technical factors, we go on to reading the chest radiograph. For that we follow an inside to out approach. Firstly, beginning with the trachea, look at the tracheal position. It should be in the midline or maybe slightly towards the right because of the arch of aorta on the left side. So trachea is in midline. If the trachea is deviated to one side, it can be because of push or pull. For example, if there is a plunging goiter and it is pushing the trachea towards the opposite side, then there will be tracheal deviation. Or if there is suppose right upper lobe collapse, so it will pull the trachea towards the same side. So tracheal deviation can be because of pull or push by certain pathologies, so look carefully. Then the lumen of the trachea, the tracheal air column should be uniform in caliber with the width of around 25 millimeters in males and 21 millimeters in females. Then there should be no intraluminal growth or foreign body. And then coming outwards, you look at the paratracheal stripe. This white line here is called the paratracheal stripe. It is formed by a thin rim of soft tissue lined by air on both sides, the tracheal air on one side and the air in the right upper lobe on the other side. So this soft tissue is called the paratracheal stripe. Normal width is up to 5 millimeters. And what all constitutes the paratracheal stripe is the tracheal wall, on one side, and the parietal and visceral pleura on the other, with some mediastinal fat and lymph nodes in between the two. So if you see widening in this region, you can quickly say that that can be because of some pathology in the tracheal wall, either some growth or thickening. Then secondly, some paratracheal lymphadenopathy or inflammation in the mediastinal fat, that is mediastinitis, or some pleural thickening or pleural effusion. So those are the differentials of widening of paratracheal stripe above 5 millimeters. And no paratracheal stripe is seen on the left side because of the esophagus and the aorta lying there. So coming downwards, this is the bifurcation of trachea into right and left main bronchi. As you see, the right bronchus is wider and more in line with the trachea, so there is a tendency for foreign bodies and aspirated secretions to go into the right bronchus more than on the left side. And this bifurcation is called the carina, and this here is the subcarinal angle. Average subcarinal angle is taken around 75 degrees. Various books mention different values, some say 60 to 80, some 70 to 90, but average, remember, around 75. Rule of thumb is that it should not be obtuse. If this carinal angle is widened and becomes obtuse, then it can point to certain pathologies like subcarinal lymphadenopathy or bronchogenic cyst, or maybe because of left atrial enlargement. Then after the carina, you look at the hilar shadows. These are the normal hilar shadows, and these are formed by the superior pulmonary vein and the inferior pulmonary artery, and this lucency that you see in between is the right upper lobe bronchus. So what all do we have to see in the hila? First is the hilar position. Normally the left hilum is at a higher level than the right. Secondly, the appearance of the hilum, by which I mean the hilar shadow should be concave laterally. If there is any bulge in this region, so that is abnormal. So the hilar position, the size of the hila, the concave lateral appearance of the hila, and then density should be uniform. If one hilum has increased density, then that is also abnormal. And what all can cause hilar enlargement and increased density? It can be because of hilar lymphadenopathy, or in cases of pulmonary artery hypertension, it can also be because of dilatation of the descending pulmonary artery here. So that is all about the hila. Then coming to the cardiac silhouette, on the right side you see the heart border is formed by the superior vena cava. then the right atrium. The upper straight part is by the SVC, the lower curved part is by the right atrium, and in some tall and thin individuals, inferior vena cava can also be visualized. Then on the left side there is the arch of aorta, the pulmonary conus, the left auricle, and then the left ventricle, which forms the apex of the heart. So that is about the cardiac borders. Then coming to the size of the heart, you see, if I draw a line in the midline, normally 2/3 of the heart lies on the left side and 1/3 lies on the right side. Now what we do, with the maximum convexity on the right side, we draw a line to the midline, and with the maximum convexity on the left side, we draw a line up to the midline. So let's say we call it A, we call it B, and then we draw a line with the which gives the maximum transthoracic diameter, normally at the level of the dome of the diaphragm, and we call it C. So A plus B divided by C, this gives us the cardiothoracic ratio. Normally for adults, this cardiothoracic ratio should be less than 50%. For children it should be less than 55%, and for neonates it should be less than 60%, the normal cardiothoracic ratio. Or you can even just measure the transverse cardiac diameter. For a PA film it should be approximately less than 14.5 centimeters, and for AP film it should be less than 15.5 centimeters. But a word of caution, there should be no rotation while commenting upon the heart size. If there is some rotation, that will lead to false magnification of the cardiac size. Also, if the inspiratory effort is inadequate, that can also lead to falsely magnification of the cardiac size. Also, in subsequent films, if the cardiac size is increased by 1.5 centimeters, then that is a significant finding. Then that is about the heart. Then also in the midline, you see these are the vertebral bodies with the intervertebral disc spaces. Also see if just see if you find any fractures or vertebral collapse in this region. Then there's a thin line of soft tissue adjacent to the vertebral body. This is called the paraspinal line. Why line? Because it is lined on air on one side and soft tissue on the other side. So line. And what is stripe? Lined by air on both the sides. So difference between line and stripe. So paraspinal line normally on right side should be up to 3 millimeters, on left side can be up to 10 millimeters. Widening can be seen in cases of paravertebral abscesses or hematomas. Also look for any osteophytes, which are more common on the right side, and on left they are osteophyte formation is prevented by pulsations of the aorta. So that is about the midline. Coming outwards, this is the cardiophrenic angle. There are certain pathologies which are specific to this region, like the Morgagni's hernia, pleuropericardial cyst, and epicardial fat pad. Then coming still outwards, look at the domes of the diaphragm. You see the this is the right dome of diaphragm, this is the left dome of diaphragm, and normally the right dome is higher than the left. Maybe both may be at the same level also, or sometimes in 3% of the population left dome also can be at a higher level. That is because of the gaseous distension of the gastric fundus or the splenic flexure. But rule of thumb is that the vertical distance, if you see, this vertical distance between the two domes should not be greater than 3 centimeters. That is the upper limit. Now if this distance is more than 3 centimeters, then that can be because of certain pathologies. This is a short note that is frequently asked, which may be seen in cases of supradiaphragmatic pathologies, diaphragmatic pathologies, or subdiaphragmatic pathologies. In supradiaphragmatic, if there is some collapse and volume loss in the lungs, that will pull the diaphragm upwards. Secondly, in the phrenic causes, if there is phrenic nerve palsy, diaphragmatic palsy or eventration, that can also lead to elevation of one diaphragm. Or thirdly, in the subdiaphragmatic causes, if there is some subphrenic abscess or mass lesion sitting here, that will also push one of the domes of diaphragm upwards. So that is about the position of the diaphragms. Then look at the margins. The diaphragmatic outline should be very sharply defined. If there is any haziness or blurring or silhouetting of the cardiac dome of diaphragm, then that will point to certain pathologies in the lower lobes of lung. Then coming still outwards, these are the costophrenic angles, which should be sharp acute angles, and they can be blunted in cases of pleural effusions or thickening or other pleural pathologies. Then coming outside, the back to the inside out approach, we come to the lung fields. Now we divide the lung fields into upper, mid and lower zones. Up to the anterior end of second rib is the mid zone, is the upper zone. From anterior end of second to fourth rib is the mid zone, and below the level of anterior end of fourth rib is the lower zone. So in all the three zones, you compare the lucency on either side, you compare the bronchovascular markings on either side, and look for any focal lesion. Then coming still outside, you look at the chest wall, look at the ribs if there is any fracture there, and also look at the intercostal spaces. Then finally look at the periphery of the lung. There should be no air under the diaphragm. There should be no fracture, like there is a old malunited fracture of clavicle here. Also you can sometimes find avascular necrosis of the head of femur or some bone cyst there. Just a word of caution, don't miss the periphery of the film. And finally, there are certain areas of the lungs which are hidden. We call them the hidden areas of lung on a frontal radiograph. Those are the apices of the lungs, the part of the lung hidden behind the hyla and the retrocardiac portion, and behind the ribs, and finally behind the domes of the diaphragm. There is a fair amount of lung tissue in the posterior basal and the lateral basal segments that can be hidden on a frontal film. So just remember these 5 hidden areas which are not well evaluated on a frontal view, which can be seen on a lateral view, which we shall discuss later. So this is all about the approach to normal chest radiograph.